We're going to talk about a couple different things here. So this is session 1 of 4. And what we're going to be doing here is going over the complete journey of Copilot governance. We're going to go over Copilot deployment journey. Then we're going to go into the Copilot control system. We're going to look at agent governance. I'm going to splash in through today's presentation some gold nuggets, things that I've often see missed, some really new stuff that's popping into the admin center. So hopefully there's some Easter eggs everybody can take. We'll talk a little bit about billing and consumption, and then we'll talk about reporting and monitoring. When we start talking about the deployment journey, when I talk to a lot of my customers, I put it in 4 phases. And I will admit, I got this from another MVP on LinkedIn, and I saw it, and I'm like, this was awesome. So as I've seen customers kind of deploy Copilot, I've seen them utilize something very similar to this, where we land. That's our first phase. And we start thinking about the Copilot. We start utilizing things like Copilot chats. So getting introduced into using AI in a secured environment at work. But more importantly, phase 1 is really where we start looking at governance and management, thinking about everything that we're going to talk about in these next 4 weeks, as well as change management. Then we take our next step and we build upon that. That's where we start expanding, where we start diving into full M365 Copilot, start looking at agents, and then figuring out different use cases. That we get into stage 3 and stage 4 is where we really start pushing we're doing the education, and our users are really having the impact and value from Copilot. And then where I see this really drawn out is when we dissect those 4 sections. This is by no means like the end all, but this is how I've seen a lot of organizations deploy this, where 0 to 2 months is really where we focus on building our governance strategies, our agent strategies, building our AI councils, champions programs, thinking about our change management, and then thinking about Purview, power of platform, how we deploy those tools, because they are essential when we start leveraging Copilot. And then when we get into phase 2, that's where that 3 to next month, this is where we start really utilizing Copilot chat. We start experimenting with agents where we're using our first party agents. So that's researcher, analyst, maybe a facilitator agent in meetings and so forth. Start building some of our own low code agents and agent builder. And then we continue down the path of building out our power platform governance, building our Purview. So this is where we start looking at things like sensitivity labels and so forth, things that Adam Hallback and Arlie are going to talk about next week and the week after. And when we get into 6 months plus, this is where we really start just fine-tuning everything, building out agents, expanding that agent from agent builder into really customized agents and so forth. So you'll have this presentation after the fact, so there'll be a blog, and I'll attach that so everyone can download that. But just kind of like a Copilot deployment journey, this is something typically that I would see from a lot of different customers, as far as thinking about what are the things I need to do within the amount of time that I want to deploy a solution. All right, so let's get some hands on keyboard here. So we're going to talk a little bit about agent management controls. So here I'm going to just go in the admin center. Gina, Naomi, and if there's any important questions and so forth, just ping me, come off mute and let me know so we can answer them live, but I have to answer things live as we go along. All right, let's dive into it. All right, so when we start governance and management of Copilot, the thing that we start out is everything really is essentially managed within the Microsoft 365 admin center. So I'm a global admin. If you have an AI administrator role, you can access a lot of these things here as well. So to get started with Copilot management and governance, it's all going to come into this little Copilot section. We call it the Copilot Control System. So you'll hear me say that quite often, but I'm just going to hit the overview section right here. This is going to give us a couple different things around overview. So understanding our Copilot, how much license, what we've got license adoptions by apps, just a really high level overview of Copilot within our tenant. And then we've got our health. I don't have a super hydrated environment here in my demo environment, but for an organization that has 50 plus Copilot licenses and people are utilizing Copilot chat, you'll see a lot of different information here. The thing that I'll call out around this is things like the connected experiences. So if we have things like connectors that aren't working or they're offline and so forth, that kind of stuff would show up here in the health section to determine the health of our environment. A lot of the stuff you also see in the reporting section that we'll get into that's in the admin center. And then also we are Discover. So this is a cool area, just kind of general learning and so forth. But the 2 main ones that I would say is just looking over overview and health is where I would say a good chunk of time is spent when we're just first getting started and understanding utilization and so forth. So once we get past the overview section, I'm going to pull your attention down to the settings icons over here. This is where all the really cool stuff is as far as all the features and capabilities. So under this user access session, this is where there's a couple things in here that as we can select them and they're just buttons for us to push. Some of these will actually lead us to another admin center. But this Copilot Frontier here. So Frontier is what we call all of our beta features and so forth. So a good example is if you've used a researcher or an analyst agent, that was actually part of Frontier for a little bit. So those users, if we have Frontier enabled in our organization, we can start utilizing some of those newer features. Some of the new Frontier things that are out right now, I think, is skills and surveys agent. So those, I believe, two ones that are out right now so that you could utilize as an agent. But if we want to allow Frontier, we can allow a group of users, so all or none. So we have that ability to turn on Frontier for different organizations or different users that want to utilize some of those experiences. Copilot and being an edge, this is actually going to pull us into another area, but those are just the other things to think about as we're thinking about what we want, where we want Copilot and how we want accessed. So some of those things we actually would want to manage directly within Intune. Copilot pay-as-you-go billing. So I'm going to touch on this in a moment, a little bit later in the presentation, but this is where we set up our billing policies for the individual pay-as-you-go services that our Copilot chat users are going to utilize. Microsoft 365 in the admin center, not a user-based Copilot, but this is the ability to select users to allow Copilot in the admin center. And what that looks like is up at this top section right here, you've got Copilot. So any admin can utilize Copilot, and this is grounded in this admin center. So we can do things like ask licensing questions. How many users do I have that are assigned to Copilot? How many licenses do I have left? Or ask very specific things around the admin center. It's not going to do work for you. So it's not going to take action for you, at least not yet, but it'll give you that as a Copilot to help you understand certain things. And here you can ask it how to do stuff and it'll help you navigate some of that area. But a really cool way to use Copilot directly within those admin centers. Cool little nugget. This agent, this experience is actually available within Copilot itself as an agent. So you can use it directly within the admin center. Or you can also use it, let me sign it. I thought I signed in earlier, but let me sign in. You can also use it directly within Copilot UI. So I can go to all agents and I can search for admin. That should come up. There's my Microsoft 360 admin center. So we can add that as an agent that an admin can utilize directly within Copilot. Some asterisks here. If they utilize it in this manner, it requires that user to have a Copilot license. If we use it directly within the admin center, we at least just need one Copilot for the tenant and then we get access. So good thing to know that if you want to use it in Copilot, just make sure that admin that's using it has a Copilot license if you want to use it in that web UI. Self-service. So this is where we can allow or disallow self-service. So some organizations keep this on, some don't. It just depends on really where you want all that build. So if we want individual business units to be able to have a trial or purchase Copilot, we can do that, or we can just select do not allow. And that way everything has to go through a central IT or central management process of getting Copilot licensing. And then finally, these two here, pin Microsoft 365 Copilot to the taskbar and pin Copilot chat. So this allows us to pin those individual items to the taskbar as well as inside of the different M365 applications as well. So something I'm going to point out here, a little nugget. If this pin Microsoft 365 Copilot, this allows us just to pin it or do not pin it. However, there's times where I work with organizations and actually, I'm on myself. I'm thinking ahead of myself here. Where was it? Oh, web search. Web search. So let's move to the data access tab. And I want to bring your attention down here. Web search for M365 Copilot and Microsoft 365 Copilot chat. So this allows us to turn web search on or off within the Copilot experience. So this is actually going to lead us to the cloud policy section over here. So cloud policy is the Microsoft 365 apps admin center. So if I'm just going to go into my policy for all users here, and I'm going to scroll through this. And once we get to the filter section, I'm going to search for Copilot. And this allows us to pin Microsoft 365 Copilot as well as allow web search in Copilot. So right now, if it's not configured, it's on by default. If we say hit enabled, we've got a couple different selections here where we've got enabled in Microsoft 365 Copilot in both Copilot, Copilot chat, disabled in both of those, or disabled in the work mode, but enabled in the web mode. Honestly, a lot of my customers will choose disabled in the work mode because they just don't want any of their work data potentially ever touching the internet. Just some kind of managing. One cool is I have a lot of different customers that want different for different security groups. So this policy that I looked at right now is applied to everyone, but I can create a policy, say I want only a certain amount of users to have web with work. I can create a policy that's only scoped to a specific security group. So I can have different policies for different security groups and so forth. So if we want to really customize that, you can. I wouldn't get too much into Louise that because then we got a lot of different policies that we're managing, but there are times when we're kind of piloting and so forth. So we want to apply different features to different user groups to see how people are using Copilot and how it affects them. So that allows us to kind of create differentiators when we're kind of building policies and allowing certain features within Copilot and so forth. Any questions for? I haven't heard anything, so I'm going to keep going here. All right. Just on other settings here. So a fun thing is the Copilot custom dictionary. So this allows to create some of the like acronyms forth that we utilize Copilot Search as well as Copilot. So this is helpful. We can import those as well as add them manually here, but those are helpful, especially if it has certain acronyms that you use a lot. We can upload those so that as users use them in Copilot, that we have some of that information so Copilot knows what they're talking about. So we have more, Copilot has more context of certain business language that we use with that. All right, let's move to the data access tab. So this is probably where a lot of organizations are going to really be interested in. And right before I move to agents, because this is a new one, AI providers for other large language model. This is that little nugget. So a week or two ago, we announced that Anthropic was an LLM that we can now utilize within Copilot. So if we want to allow that or so forth, this is where we would go to turn that on or off. Right now it's off, so we don't have to the legal, so nobody has access in my demo tenant right now, but this is where you would select if you wanted to use Anthropic and so forth. All right, let's head to this agent section. So agents is something a lot of organizations are talking about. They're thinking about agents, how they can apply them to different scenarios and so forth. And there's a lot of different ways to use agents for personal productivity, small group settings, as well as large scale agents for the enterprise. But other customers that I work with are kind of take us to this just because it can get out of hand super quickly. So the goal of this to help you kind of have strategy around how we utilize all of this and how we use agents. But if we want to use agents, we have a all, none, or some approach to using agents. So we can allow agents for all users, which means that when I go to the Copilot web URL, I've got agents here, and I also can create an agent really easily here as well. So that's when we put it on for everyone or certain users, this is what that experience looks like. I've got agents. I can create agents directly within the web UI. And then we can select no one or specific user groups. Most of the time, my organizations I work with will usually try to scope it to a certain security group. Usually that security group is their Copilot chat kind of POC they're with already. And so when we create that security group, it's easy for us to add people to that security group and then that policy to them as that continues to grow and so forth. But that is how we manage who has access to agents. The question that I get often that I will be completely transparent on is when we allow agents, they get agents and they also get the ability to create an agent, at least at this moment in time. There's no way to allow an agent, but disable create an agent. So just an FYI there, it's a common question I get, but at this moment, it's kind of an all or nothing. We allow the create agents and so forth, but there's a lot of value to creating agents. I create a lot of personal agents directly within the web URI. Like for like a boss agent that kind of virtualizes my manager that I can kind of bounce and so forth. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do as a personal agent. And honestly, I've worked at quite a few organizations that their users are creating agents and then IT gets kind of wind of what their agent is doing, like a tips agent or something like that, with like, we love that. And they want to scale that agent large broadly. So there's organization, we allow agents, we can kind of see business use cases within our organization and see how we apply those more broadly. So there's a lot of value to allowing those users to create those agents and kind of experiment. The other area that I'll point you down here is this section right down here. Choose which type of apps and agents users allowed to install. And you've got this allow apps and agents created by external publishers unchecked. So one of the questions that's come up in the past few weeks is I've got all of these like apps in my agent store. So when I go to Copilot, I've got it turned off. So you're not going to see a lot right here, but I can go to all agents. So this is my agent store. And right now, since I have it turned off, it's just Microsoft first-party agents and then anything that I've created here. So I created the Message Center agent and IT Help Desk agent and so forth. But there's times if we allow those third-party agents, there you'd see a lot more agents in here, like Workday, Monday, ServiceNow, so forth. So if we want to like bulk remove all of those, so we have a more tailored, a lot less noise, we can disallow those agents created by external publishers. So that just removes them altogether. Additionally, we have the ability to turn off apps created by Microsoft. We hope you don't do that. But there's some really cool agents like researcher surveys skills that are coming out that are really awesome and allow apps and agents built by your organization as well. I haven't started with that one yet, but I think a lot of organizations are interested in this one just to kind of bulk. So that's how we manage agents and some of the agents in the store. Let's take a look at the agent section over here. So we spent time with settings. I want to look at agents. So this is our catalog of all of the agents and apps that are available. So these are potentially everything that was in the store if we didn't disable third party. So there's a couple things that I'll here. So we've got the agent, we've got the type. So I'm going to sort this here. So the type is for Microsoft. It says Microsoft. That's our first party agent. So this is your researcher, analyst, skills, so forth. Then we've also got custom. Customs are agents that are made by your organization through Copilot Studio or the M365 toolkit. So custom developed. And then we've also got shared agents. Shared agents are going to be agents that are made inside of Agent Builder, or we call it Copilot Studio Lite now. So these are the agents that if I go to Copilot right now and I hit create agent and I go through this process of creating this agent, that is what that shared agent is. So we've got a couple different things that we can do here. So for custom agents here, I can go ahead and select that agent, and then I can see general overview information in it, as well as details information like what capabilities, what knowledge, what action. So if custom agents that may be using certain third-party connectors, triggers, so forth, we'd be able to see all of that information here. This IT Help Desk agent, I just started making, so I haven't done anything with it. But we will see all of that information there. But the thing that a lot of organizations are interested in is, okay, how to get an agent to an end user? And this is where we have the ability to deploy and available to. So with deploy, we can select the entire group or specific users. This is super helpful. So if you've got a specific that is only applicable to a handful of users, we can select that security group and make it available to them. And then we can also deploy it to them. So it kind of installs for them as well. So we have both those abilities. A little nugget up here is this pin for users. I actually didn't catch this till probably about a week and a half ago. I didn't see this. So I don't know how new that is, but that's a little golden nugget I'll show you in a second. But we make that agent available. So we can do that with Microsoft with agents. Shared agents are a little bit different. Shared agents don't have the same controls or limited set of controls when it comes to overall governance. So with a shared agent, when you create that agent in here, I have the ability to I don't have a great example here, but I have the ability when I hit this ellipsis here, I can share that agent. And what that would give me is a link. So I'd have the ability to share with everyone or specific users, and then it would give me a link to copy and send to that end user. That end users would need to manually click that link to install that agent and use that agent. But we can't just scale that globally to all of our organizations. That's the only way to share that. So when we create an agent here, it's more of I like to look at it as a personal productivity agent or like a small group agent. It's not an agent meant to scale at the enterprise just because it doesn't have all the governance controls and sharing controls around that agent. So when we see them in the admin center, at least to date, we have the ability to look at it so we can see the overview and details of that as well. And then essentially we have the ability to either delete it or block it. So when it comes to, but the things I would point out here is we can get things like our shared agents. We can see the availability. We can see where it's supported in, but we can also see the publisher. So if we're seeing like things like agents and a lot of them, and maybe that I said earlier, we've got a benefit agents or something like that. And we're seeing a lot of utilization, which I'll show you where we would see that. we as administrator can go in here and, hey, my administrator created a shared agent that seems to get a lot of usage. Let's talk to them about it. So that's kind of how I would approach some of these where, sure, we can block it, we can delete it if we really wanted to, but maybe there's value there for the organization. Maybe it's hitting a need that other people need, and I'll talk to this person to see what we can do about it. Or if it's completely out there and it's just not applicable to the organization, I can delete it or block it from there. So that's kind of how we manage some of the agents here. One thing that I'll point out here, this kind of new to me, I found this probably about a week or so ago, but this missing owner here. So if I select that, that will show you, I don't have anything in here, but that will show us if there's any agents that don't have an owner. So let's say someone left the organization, or sometimes if they lost their Copilot license and so forth, it may show up as it doesn't have an owner. We can see it. We can see those agents here to kind of take that's blocking them or trying to dig into those a little bit more. But I found that helpful, something new. All right. So that little golden nugget that I mentioned here, manage pinned agents. This is a newer one that I saw, but this allows, so researcher and analysts are pinned by default, but we can add other agents and pin those agents to our end user. So I pinned IT help desk. I can unpin it. I can edit the users. I can also go in here and hit this pin new agent. And then all the agents that I have that are available to me, I can pin for those users. And what that looks like, I'm going to open up a DIL and I'm going to go to Copilot, and you're going to see that I pinned that IT help desk agent for him. So it's right there, this IT help. And you see that this little pin is actually grayed out, so he can't remove it. I've pinned it as an admin because this is an agent I want all my users to utilize. So if we've got certain agents that we want to make sure are utilized because they benefit the organization whole, whether it's an IT agent, a benefits agent, or something like that. We have the ability to make sure that they're up there, recognized, and people can see them as part of the agents that they can utilize. Check on any questions so far. Let's Q&A here. New posts. What is a recommended way to convert a shared agent to one that is centrally managed or custom? So as right now, there's not a way to move a shared agent from Copilot Lite to Copilot Studio Full. That is a feature that is in development, but right now that do that is kind of just moving. With Agent Builder, since building agents in Agent Builder, there's limited sets of things that we can do, like attach SharePoint files and stuff like that. We can't use any third-party connectors and stuff like that. So the time to move an agent to Copilot Studio proper usually isn't super draining. Hey, just copy the instructions and then give me the links to all the SharePoint sites that you utilize as part of this agent. That fills the bucket there, but there's not an easy one-click move to Copilot Studio just yet. If you have an agent with no owner, can you assign a new owner? Ooh, good question. I actually have not run into that one yet. I have to look into that one for you. I just saw the feature and I haven't dived into it. So I'd have to remove one of my users to get it into an ownerless state to see what I can do there. Where do we go to create an agent in Copilot? So the easiest way to do that right now is go to the Copilot URL. I still utilize office.com. It's just a default for me. And then you have this little create agent section here. If you don't not have a create agent, that means that your admin has turned off agents. So back to that settings in the Copilot Control System, they're going to usually part of the security group, or they just turned off agents as a whole. All right. Any other questions there? All right, cool. So that's a big points of agents governance. Let's get into kind of a little bit about the billing. I'm not going to go too deep into this. But when we have our Copilot Studio and platform, Power Platform session of next week, those are good questions to bring to Adam, because a lot of what we do around pay-to-go is usually around custom agents and so forth. And so a lot of that is done within Power Platform. However, there is a billing and usage section here directly within the M365 Admin Center. So this applies to agents that, like our Copilot chat users, if they're creating agents and using any third-party connection or connections, we want to set billing for them so they can utilize that consumption. So when you create an agent, you have the ability to create an agent with web resources or just custom instructions with no major, like that often with a lot of my agents. Those are no cost. Any Copilot chat users can create those and utilize those without any costs. When a Copilot chat user, so when they don't have a full Copilot license and they create an agent, or they utilize an agent that someone else made that is using any type of work data, so SharePoint files and Teams meetings and stuff like that, or third-party connections to like ServiceNow, Workday, Monday, and like that, there would be a consumption around that. So if we want those users to be able to utilize that, we need to create a billing policy and assign that as a pay-as-you-go. So to create a billing policy, first you need to have Azure subscription set up. So I'm not going to go through that process there, but that is you need an Azure subscription as well as resources assigned to that. And then you can add a billing process and go through that whatever subscription, your resources and regions. And then you also, when you go through that, I'll just, let's see if I can do this. I think I've assigned all of these already, so it may not completely work because I have those two already assigned. Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to work because I've already got them assigned. But you'll see here I've got HR assigned, and you can then assign them to a specific security group as well. And then when you do that, you go to pay as you go, and then you either assign those to Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat or SharePoint agents. The thing here is you can turn, when you have them different resources and different user groups, we can then go through things like billing departments. So if we want to assign consumptions and usage to certain billing departments and so forth, we can do that. So I can turn these on. So if I turn both of these on, I got one going to my nursing, one going to Copilot Chat users. Probably not a great example of Copilot Chat users, but the idea here is we can start assigning billing by department. And so that's for Copilot Chat. And then you also have to do the same for SharePoint agents. We haven't talked about SharePoint agents, but that is something that is available on with asterisks, all SharePoint, unless we specifically some of those features off, and then we can assign the same thing for SharePoint agents. So I'm going to go back to Q&A, see if there's anything there. So I've created an agent and MC. Give you a little context. MCS. I'm sorry, I'm horrible with acronyms, but if you give me more context, I'll try to answer that question for you. Custom dictionary. Does it apply to Copilot Studio agents? Ooh. Gina, or Chad, if you're in the chat, or Naomi, I would love to get your perspective if you guys answer that one. I assume so, but I'm not completely confident in that one. All right. So we are at our 11:30 mark. So we've gone over kind of agents. We've got settings and agents and billings. One thing I'll go over here last before we kind of move into reporting is your connectors. So connectors allow you to data into Copilot that's outside of your tenant. So in this example, I actually have a ServiceNow knowledge base that I brought into my tenant. It's their state. I haven't completed the connection here. But the gallery goes all the different things that we can add in here. So this is what we call graph connector. So a graph connector is a read-only feed to pull into Copilot and kind of like, I would say, like caches data so that we can utilize. So in the example of my ServiceNow connection, I'm bringing those knowledge base in there so that my Copilot users can actually turn on and off that connection, or just use Copilot and say, how do I VPN? If that's a knowledge base inside of ServiceNow, it'll be able to pull that information directly because the graph connector is part of our tenant. And so we have that data as part of there. So there's some benefits there. And, back to that, if our connectors are down and so forth, we will see that. But cruise through here, there's a lot of different information in here. I'd probably say one of the more common ones I see, ServiceNow, Workday. I'm not sure Workday, but ServiceNow is probably one of the bigger ones that I see being added there. Mostly bases and IT requests. So the thing with a connector is it's not a real time. So it crawls at certain intervals. I think the lowest is like 30, 15 minutes. So near real time, but it's not a real time feed, and it's a read only feed. So it's good for databases and libraries that aren't, so it has enough time to crawl and get all of it back as databases updated. So just a good thing to know, because there's graph connectors, which we hear, but when we move to Copilot Studio, we have things like plugins or essentially Power Platform connectors that give us things like real-time feed. So some differences there, but adding a connection is we go in here and we select whatever we want. So let's bring in another knowledge in here. And in this example with ServiceNow, we just kind of go in here, plug our URL method. Most organizations are for service probably going to use OAuth unless they're doing SSO with Microsoft Entra ID. That might be an easier method than OAuth. Basic would kind of give everybody access, unless it's agents only use a handful of users, and then kind of just complete that. Takes a day or so for that information cache in there. But once that's in there, you're able to see in your connection, you'll be able to see the stage rollout connections and sync and so forth. You'll be able to validate all of that information. All right, let's go back to the Q&A here. A graph connector is enabled. Is it possible to use the same connector in Copilot Studio? Yes, absolutely. So actually, when you use a graph connector, it shows up in Agent Builder, so the Copilot Studio Lite, as well as in Copilot Studio. So you have to see all use that in both of those areas. Absolutely. Can you share one more time where the agents are turned on and off? Absolutely. So for agent management, we go to Copilot Control System, and then we just go to these settings down here, and then your data access tab. And then right here is our agent section. So we hit agents, and then, yeah, that's where we turn on and off agent use, as well as what agents are available in the store. All right. Can you explain how to avoid consumption charges? All right, I will try to tackle that one at the end. We're going to go into a little bit of reporting here. Hope I got that, Keisha. But try to remind if I don't get to it. All right, so let's dig into reporting. So covered how we manage Copilot, the different things, how we manage web access, agents, a little bit about setting up billing policies. So now let's dive into reporting. So around reporting, there's kind of three main reporting in the admin center. So I like to look at the admin center reporting as like things for the IT professionals. We want to really dig into data and so forth and understand license utilization, adoption, and so forth. The admin center has really great reports for those IT professionals. Additionally, have our Copilot dashboard. This is where I like to say the difference between like sending your dashboard, you're going to be able to things like utilization and trends and so forth, but the data that's represented in there really targets like your IT leadership and they really understand the organization as a whole on how Copilot's being used, where that KPI and that ROI is coming from. And then lastly, you have advanced reporting. This is where we start. A lot of these are Power BI reports, but they're utilized within Viva. So Copilot Dashboard is something that you utilize within Viva. Things like the Copilot Impact Report is actually a report that you access within Viva Insights as well. So kind of three different areas kind of tackle that kind of perspectives on where I would say you're first going on Copilot journey. Take advantage of the admin center reports. One, they take a little bit of time to hydrate because if we're brand new or introducing Copilot license and so forth, our users have to use data for it to be hydrated. One of the challenges I have in my demo environment, I have enough hydration there. So some of the things I show you won't, you're going to see all different data in yours. And then take advantage of those and also turn on the Copilot dashboard. So I'll point out with a dashboard, you get the most value out of it if you have at minimum 50 Copilot users, because that opens up more advanced analytics within the dashboard. But again, this is where like a good kind of see KPI, ROI, like leadership level understanding of some of the data that's in there. Get the Copilot dashboard, like set it up now, turn on, assign users and so forth, and just let that stuff hydrate because that can take sometimes a week for it to hydrate. So if you haven't turned that on, go ahead and turn it on so we can get that roll in. And then the advanced reporting, I'll show you where some of those are, but within Viva, but just another tool to kind of consume data. But the one's the admin center and Copilot dashboard. All right, let's get into the admin center here. So to access the reports in the admin center, we're going to go down to here and then we're going to go to usage. Like I said, I'm not going to have a lot of data in here to show you what a Hydra look like. But once we're in usage, we're going to drop down this Microsoft 365 Copilot. And we've got four different here. So our Copilot, this is going to look at our readiness around Copilot. So M365 Copilot. So we can see a license utilization and as well as users that are using it. By default, this user information is nominized. So I went into our org settings and turned this on just because I just wanted to test it and see what it is. But by default, you would not see this user information unless you went into the settings section of the admin center and turned that on. But this is where we can see things like if they're using it, what channels, if they're using it in Teams meeting, Teams chats, and other M365 applications as well. The usage is when we get into actually who's using what, summary of the different applications and utilization there. Also, some really cool little nuggets here is the take action. So this allows us to actually send like a little to those end users around different things. So yeah. But this is a summary of overall adoption looks like and everything. And all of this can be exported to CSV if we want to utilize it in Power BI and so forth. And then the agent section here. I don't have much to show here, but this is actually a really powerful tool. So back to those examples where I mentioned looking at different agents, whether shared agents, custom agents, third-party or first-party agents. This is where we'll be able to see those activities. So if we've got a lot of shared agents that are being made in Copilot, kind of look at those. And this one's getting a lot of usage from X amount of people. Maybe this is a business need and I need to take a stronger look at this of agent here. So this is this little one, I believe, going to be pulled out into its own section here, but at least to date of this webinar, it's still in this Copilot section here. And Copilot Chat is kind of just look at the Copilot Chat with all your users here. So we can see active users and types of prompts and forth. When we get into prompts and kind of analytics and so forth, this is where you're going to find more value from our Purview section. So it's one of the common questions I get is, can we track isn't a great word to say, but can we audit different so forth? And there's a reason to do that. We want to make sure that our users aren't putting things like sensitive information in their PHI or social security numbers and so forth. So the answer is yes. Everything that we do within Copilot, within our tenant, has an auditable trail. And that's where Arlie's going to talk about what we can see and how we monitor and those prompts and the actions in there so that we can more of an approach. But if we do have sensitive going in there, we can have rules within Purview that lets an administrator know. And then we can just coach our end users saying, hey, this is the policy, this is how we use AI here, and just a good to coach our end users as they start to utilize and build that AI skill. But Purview is a really good section for there, but we can see some of that general high-level usage here. Copilot Search, we didn't talk about this one, but Copilot Search within Copilot app, I'm going to mutter over here. So you got chat. This is what everyone's used to. We chat with Copilot, get that input output there. That's how we utilize agents. But Search is another cool tool. So Search is, it's Microsoft Search, but I like say Microsoft Search so it uses AI to search this information. So Copilot, honestly, Copilot's really good at search, but if we just want a specific file, we don't need all the chatter and stuff like that we get out of Copilot. We just need a file. We don't know where it's at, or we just know a little bit of information around it. We can use search to find that file more easily. So just kind of different usages for how we use Copilot and search, but this is AI. It's got Copilot behind us search some of those information, but it's just files only. So not files, but it's just the resources and content. So not as much. If we don't want all that chatter around everything, search is a really cool tool to use. But that's where we kind of utilize some of that. And then credits. This was, if you've been in the section before, this was called messages. So messages are now kind of rebranded to Copilot credits. This is where we have monitored that. So back to that billing. So this is, if we monitor our billing, monitor consumption of all that, this is the report that I would recommend utilizing. Pay attention to this, log in every couple, kind of utilize, look at your so forth. All right. So that's kind of general reports within the, this is where I would start as you kind of start building out let's talk about the Copilot. So let's talk about how we at least get it set up really quickly. So to get access to the Copilot dashboard, we go to settings here and we go to Viva. Copilot dashboard runs off Viva Insights. And then once we select this Viva Insights here, and then I'm going to scroll down to Copilot dashboard. It's got a section here. So we can turn Copilot dashboard on or off. It should be on by default, but the thing that we need to do is manage user access. So this is where we want to start adding different managers and so forth, or different groups to there. So go that process, adding those users and groups to get to so people have access and that environment starts getting hydrated. And now my Copilot doesn't have a lot of information in it, but let's look at some general reporting around that. Right. We're going to back up one here. Okay. Copilot. So it's kind of just a quick look, number of licenses employees have, as well as how many of those are kind of actively using Copilot. What you saw when we're scrolling down here is groups that are Copilot the most, and kind of how that usage is timed. So kind of if we, but I'll point out at them here, what we're looking at is looking at some of the Microsoft apps. So I can see like how many people are using to summarize things in meetings, so forth, chats and reminding messages. That's some of the insights that we can get directly from the Copilot dashboard. And then if we go into, let's see, where are we going here so that you saw that explore more feature. So now we can kind of get into the different groups of Copilot. So we can identify like the number of Copilot that are being taken, or employees are actually using Copilot, how consistently they're doing it within a week and over the past. So And some more, I'm going over, taking a look at some of the other tabs in here. We've got the impact tab that provides us like the number of Copilot actions over the company as a whole. So the number of potential hours that are being saved. And we could also look on the far right, that little money sign icon. So we can actually convert that into time savings. So that is something as well to kind of estimate potential assisted value getting from Copilot. And as we scroll down, we could also see how Copilot is potentially transforming different ways that people kind of all their work functions. We kind of go down through this, look at it, and kind of understand things like sentiment, any of the Copilot interactions that our users are having. So part of this is as you're going through in your POC, sending out things like pulses, get surveys from their end users, important thing. And you actually get access to pulse through this, so you can send those to those users free of charge. And that just, there's templates in there you can utilize as well with Pulse. This is very important to kind of get understanding when it's to this, like Copilot, it's people, process, technology, the way I like to say it, where we can't put technology first. We have to understand how our people want to utilize it, build the processes and the education, and then apply the technology. So, getting that stuff from our users is important. And I'll give you an example. I was working with a customer, and one of the things we're doing is they needed as part of their Copilot journey, because sensitivity labels are super important. And what they through and have used the general templates in Purview, and a lot of times those work, but every organization is very different. The problem they had was the sensitivity labels were they're there to track certain words and so forth, and the language that was very different from the template. So it was actually giving a lot of false positives, and they couldn't figure it out. So eventually they talked to their informatics teams and found out, like, this is not the language you use. These are not the acronyms you use. These are all the things we use. So they ended up fixing and applying that, and Purview was great. It worked really well. But what they learned there is that they need to work with other people, other organizations, to get that sentiment, to get that information that they may or may not know. So definitely, people, process, technology went to applying this within Copilot. But that's a bit about the Copilot dashboard. Other areas here, I went up this real quick, but I mentioned that there's other reports that we can utilize here. So that's, you kind of see at the top the Copilot dashboard. So when you turn that on and you add yourself, you go to Viva Insights, and you'll have a personal, and then you'll have another tab for your dashboard, and that's where you to access it. And then you've got these other reports here. So we can look at things like the agent report and the Copilot business impact report, two really cool reports that are built off Power BI, I believe, but that's just going to give you a lot of different insights into other areas. So like, depending on what do you want, there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of look at that information for whatever business that we need. But that's kind of a Copilot dashboard. The thing that I would kind of say is, what organizations, we're starting with our readiness. It's looking at, are we ready? This is where we are looking at some of the admin reports, and then we move to usage. So are our people using it? This is where we start looking at kind of the consumption, the forth within the admin reports, and then we start engaging with agents. So, those controls around looking at the reporting of those agents. So that agent section that I mentioned before, and then, understanding those it's an empowering search. When we look at kind of when we kind of Admin Center, what we can look at in Copilot dashboard, as well as other Power BI reports like the agent consumption report and impact report. But so with that, that's kind of Copilot governance. About 50. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. If anyone has a question, please put it in, and I can try to unmute you if you want. If you have a question, and I'll read through some of the Q&A here. Is the dashboard and reporting available in GCC? Oh, we do have a comment. Oh, thanks, Chad. So Gino or Chad or Naomi, are there any questions that specifically you want to answer live for us here? If you have a question, raise your hand too. I can try to unmute you. All right. So it doesn't sound like we have any other questions here. With that said, I'm going to leave you with some next steps here. So our upcoming sessions are once a week. So October 21st, we're going to go over Copilot Studio and Power Platform Governance. This is where we're going to go over things like managed environments. So when we start building agents, Copilot Studio, Power Platform Governance becomes very important. Things like managed environments and applying policies and so forth. So this is where we dig into, should I have a dev environment set up, or should I have a production? Do I build agents in an environment and just publish them? Those are all questions we're going to answer. And then Purview, this is where we get into sensitivity labels, Copilot interaction, auditing, and so forth. And then we're going to end with SharePoint Advanced Management. So that's the how do we actually manage the content that our users have access to. And the last thing I'll kind of end with you is, if you're down this journey, wherever you are in that path, there's a lot of different resources we have here at Microsoft. So Fast Track is a really awesome resource. They're not hands-on keys. They offer some really great guidance and consulting. If you're looking to deploy Copilot dashboard, if you want to get into SharePoint Advanced Management, that's a really good team to interact with. Talk to your account team. They can get you connected with them. It's part of your entitlement with your Copilot licenses. So there are no charge resources to help you get up and running with some of the things that we talked about here. We also have some really cool workshops. So these are, can span a couple days that are tailored towards individual things, end user training to in-depth admin training. And one of the more popular ones that we use is a promptathon. So this is where you join us at our Microsoft centers, or a lot of times we'll meet you at your and so forth, and have a get together with a group. We usually see anywhere 100 plus people, depending on the size of the room, but we go over and we help educate your users. And then we have a really fun time of building prompts, building agents, and kind of building out different use of the organization. It's really fun. We actually see a lot of cool things come from those. So some really cool things that we can do here at Microsoft that are available to you. But with that said, if there's questions, I really appreciate time. I hope this was helpful. There will be a blog out with of this video as well as the presentation here, and you should have access to the recording as well once I kind of approve that. So I tried today. I see you at the next meeting. And if you have any questions, feel free to Teams me individually. I'm happy to answer anything. But thank you, everyone. Have an awesome Wednesday.